Hello everyone, this is Sorry and Target welcoming you back to another entry in our Carnivores Ranked series, where today we're going to be ranking every single animal in the iconic Carnivores Ice Age mod, Carnivores Triassic. Specifically today, the beta 1.99 release. Now, we've ranked all of the Carnivores games in the first video in this series, but I wanted to really dive into the mods and give the hard work of the community some spotlight and talk about their work. Now, initially, I had these videos conceived as more of a top 5 list, but if I only covered the top 5 animals in each mod, I'd have to exclude like 70% of each mod's creatures, and I want to talk about all of them. Plus, I like for top 5 videos to be pretty finalized, more like a one and done video series, you know? I don't want to do a top 5 part 2 every time a new DLC pack or update comes out, so this way, we can establish the list and then update it as the mod receives new updates. So when certain animals get new models or animations, we can see where their position on the list changes. Or if new DLC dinosaurs get added, we can see where they fit into the list. You know, keep it ever expanding and growing. Now, for the sake of these ranked lists, I'm only including the animals actively featured in the current releases of each mod. That of course includes DLC animals, but no map ambience. Partly because they are so limited in function compared to the actual animals, and partly because of how I'm ranking these animals. I'll be analyzing them by their animations, sound work, and challenge to hunt, among other things. And map ambience either don't or barely qualify for any of those criteria, so they will be excluded for these lists. And I'm not including any discontinued or unreleased animals, so in Triassic's case specifically, no feral hounds or Damonsaurus, which sucks because it's one of my favorite Carnivores creature designs ever. So this list will be the base 10 Triassic huntable animals, the 2 ambient animals, and the 5 DLC animals, for a total of 17 animals on this list. And, of course, I think it should go without saying, this list is purely subjective and entirely my singular opinion. Now, I've tried to be reasonably objective in my reasoning for where each animal sits on this list, but at the end of the day, this list is based around my personal opinions. And I'm sure we're not all gonna agree, and that's awesome, so be sure to let me know what your Carnivores Triassic list looks like down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Alright, we've got a lot to talk about today, so without further ado, let's begin our list with number 17. So topping our list at number 17, we have the Triassic sector's lone pterosaur, Patinosaurus. So just to clarify, there's not a single creature in Carnivores Triassic that I actually dislike. This is basically a least favorite to favorite list. But someone has to end up at the bottom, and I think Patinosaurus does, in my opinion anyway, because it's just not very impactful. In the base Ice Age engine, which Carnivores Triassic uses a slightly modified version of, there are only 2 ambient AI animal slots, one for an aerial creature and one for a terrestrial creature. So any mod using this engine really has to make its ambient animals stand out as iconic and unique, because
hey, there's only like 2 of them.
And while there's nothing really wrong with Patinosaurus, there's nothing really special about it either. It was a creature from the Triassic period, so it is thematically appropriate, not to mention aesthetically appropriate with its blazing orange and yellow color scheme, but it just looks like the Dimorphodon, a creature that already isn't the most exciting reptile in the world. Sure, the arrow tail is cool and the calls are nice, but it's so similar that I feel it loses a bit of its uniqueness. It's just a Dimorphodon of the desert. Top it all off with the fact that it's an ambient that you can't even really interact with because it's just flying around so far above your head. It really just feels inconsequential by comparison to the rest of Triassic's roster. Again, not bad, and it does help flesh out the harsh Triassic world, but just by comparison, it has trouble standing out. So Patinosaurus comes in at number 17. Moving down to the number 16 spot, we have the gigantic fanged moose crocodile, Edaphosaurus. Edaphosaurus is a creature that I want so badly to love. I really do. But every time I come back to Triassic to hunt it, I'm reminded of why I don't. I mean, what's not to love about this design? Its imposing fangs, giant bony bosses, thick reptilian body, striking palmated antlers. It's like the ultimate monster mashup, and sounds perfect for an alien planet crawling with distinctly prehistoric looking reptiles. Its sound work is also fantastic, and even its animations are slick and fluid. So why do I think it's so low on this list? Unfortunately, that's gonna have to come down to its skin. The base Desmet Asuka skin is literally the vanilla Mashop skin, just slightly more brown around the feet. Now that's already not great, but after seeing how other creatures also related to the Mashops, like Placerius or the old Lystrosaurus, use textures and patterns very similar to the Mashops, while still managing to stand out on their own, Desmet Asuka's just feels worse. It even has an alternate skin if default Mashops isn't your thing, but it's just a slightly yellower version with some tan splashes plopped on there. Not to mention it's got some pretty glaring D3D transparency issues on both skins, and just feels like it got the short end of the stick during its design process. Desmet Asuka is a creature that, I hate that I don't love it, because I really want to. But it just doesn't stack up that well compared to the other creatures in the Triassic sector in my opinion. So it comes in at number 16. Coming in at number 15, we have one of the few dinosaurs on the Triassic tour, the prosauropod Plateosaurus. Now, if I were to take away all of my semi-objective criteria for the sake of this list and made it just completely 100% my own personal opinion, Plateosaurus is my personal least favorite creature in Carnivores Triassic. I have zero desire to hunt this thing ever. Its skin is just boring green and brown. Its animations are as stiff as a board. Its calls are really kinda subpar, and it's a little terrifying in the face. It feels a lot like Triassic's old Coelophysis model, and if you never saw that thing in action, trust me, that's not a good comparison. But I do think it deserves to be ever so slightly bumped up on this list because it is Plateosaurus, one of the most iconic Triassic animals ever. Not to mention, in a sector dominated by hulking reptiles, it's rare for being a dinosaur, an elegant one at that, and not just a dinosaur, a prosauropod. I think Carnivores Divergent is going to feature Ardonyx, but beyond that, Plateosaurus is like the lone prosauropod on the dinosaur planet. That's pretty special. Plus, Plateosaurus is getting a much more characterized and aesthetically appropriate overhaul in a future update. So that gives me hope for its future, but until then, I'd say it earns its spot at number 15. Taking the number 14 spot is the gigantic sail-backed crocodile Lotosaurus. So, in sharp contrast to Plateosaurus, Lotosaurus is actually one of my favorite animals in Carnivores Triassic. I adore its iconic design and muted yet interesting colors. Those red eyes are perfection. And just as a concept, what it is and represents and its placement on the roster, it feels so unique and characterized. I love it. So why is it so low on this list? I'm afraid that's gonna come down mostly to its animations. Lotosaurus's animations are as basic as Carnivores animations get, and to make matters worse, they're as stiff as a board, and make this creature feel more like a robot than a living, breathing animal. Plus, as an early tier herbivore, it tends to get overlooked quite often on the hunting roster, with many players preferring the more dangerous creatures on the Triassic tour. A well-done Carnivores creature is one that players return to hunt no matter where it's placed on the hunting roster. And I think with some better animations, Lotosaurus could be just that. But because they're so rigid and lifeless, most people move past it without a second thought. So, unfortunately, it comes in at number 14. Moving down to unlucky number 13 is the first huntable animal on the Triassic tour, Edaphosaurus. This larger relative of the central sector's Dimetrodon loses points on this list because, well, it's just a reskinned Dimetrodon. Same model, same texture, same animations and everything. Because it is a vanilla Carnivores animal, however, it is very high quality. And with a gorgeous custom skin, it works well as your introduction to the Triassic tour. However, because there's no speed patch control with this mod, it is extremely fast. and makes hunting it with that inaccurate pea-shooting starter pistol a nightmare. Granted, that is a nice kick-in-the-pants reality check that the Triassic sector is known for, but sometimes it's a bit too difficult, especially for beginners. The Edaphosaurus is also getting a new model in a future update, ironically, based on Charles Knight's Dimetrodon. So we'll have to see how that new iteration impacts the creature's placement on this list, but until then, Edaphosaurus is good, not great. So it comes in at number 13. Coming in at number 12, we have the sole other ambient animal in the Triassic sector, Lystrosaurus. Rest in peace, Damonsaurus. You live on in our hearts. So, Lystrosaurus is one of 2 ambient animals in all of Carnivores Triassic. Because it's an ambient animal, it's naturally at a disadvantage. But as the only terrestrial ambient animal, it needs to be able to stand out to make any sort of impact. And I think Lystrosaurus does. It's a beautifully chunky homage to Burian's own painting of the creature, with a little bit of pig striping thrown in there to reference the ambient animal that came before it. And, in my opinion, this model is a vast improvement over its previous incarnation. However, it does lack any sound work right now, so that puts a damper on my positivity towards it. But this is one of the few instances where I do think putting some pig sounds on a carnivore's creature would work really well. Much better than some. I love this Lystrosaurus. Its adorable little waddle and chunky build just fills me with joy. But because it's a mute ambient animal, it's not quite as fleshed out as the only terrestrial ambient animal in the mod should be. So it comes in at number 12. Just missing the top 10 at number 11, we have the herbivorous shovel-nosed crocodile Desmetasuchus. Desmetasuchus and I have a very strained relationship. Because it's the first animal you can hunt in the Triassic sector, like the Edaphosaurus, it is lightning fast. And because it's so flat, it's like trying to shoot a pancake sliding around at 100 miles an hour. This makes it more frustrating than fun to hunt. At least Edaphosaurus's eye spot on the sail makes a nice bullseye to aim for. What am I aiming for with this thing? But I have to acknowledge that it is a well-designed carnivore's creature. The skin coloration is a bit bland, but the unique texture and patterning help alleviate that issue. Desmetasuchus isn't a bad creature by any means, it's just a pain in the butt to hunt, especially for a starting animal, so it comes in at number 11. Breaking in the top 10 is another Walking with Dinosaurs classic, Placerius, or Placerius depending on whether or not you're Kenneth Branagh. Oh, I love that guy. Placerius is one of those animals that I think hits the carnivore's canon design sweet spot perfectly. It's distinct and recognizable as its namesake animal, but still very unique and alien. Its sound work is wonderful, ranging from low, guttural grunts to fierce howls, and it just feels so fantastically primitive. Because it's on Woolly Rhino AI, it also hangs on its idle animations for like ever, which is such a blessing when trying to gather footage for videos. However, the reason it's on the low end of the top 10 spectrum is, like a few of the Triassic creatures, its animations. They are very stiff and rigid, and lack the weight and heft I think a creature built like Placerius should exude. With some better animations, Placerius could easily bump its way farther up into the top 10, but as it stands, it's gotta break even at number 10. Moving down to the number 9 spot is the apex predator of the Triassic sector, the mighty Megalosaurus. I adore what Megalosaurus represents in Carnivores Triassic. As an early Jurassic Earth dinosaur and the final huntable animal in Carnivores Triassic, it's a perfect finale, symbolizing the end of the Triassic era and tour, while being just close enough in time to still make sense thematically. It's also a rare dinosaur on the Triassic tour, fittingly representing how dinosaurs would go on to dominate the Earth. That's always been such a neat concept to me. Aside from that, the current interpretation of Megalosaurus is fine, but not quite as outstanding as I think the final animal in one of the greatest Carnivores mods ever could be. Megalosaurus has gone through quite a few iterations over Carnivores Triassic's lifespan, and the current beta 1.99 version is good, I like that the skin is a rich mahogany brown as opposed to dull desert brown, but the texture is a bit blurry, especially on the face. The tail gets very wispy at the end, and it looks exactly like a Carcharodontosaurus. This is a really good dinosaur. It's just not quite where I personally think the final Carnivores Triassic animal should be. However, the Megalosaurus is getting a new model based on the Invicta toy line version of the dinosaur that, as long as the animations are good, I think is gonna fix a lot of my issues with it. But until then, Megalosaurus remains really good, just not great. So it comes in at number 9. Coming in at number 8, we have the giant saber-fanged therapsid Gorgonops. So I gotta be completely honest here, I am not a big fan of this Gorgonops. I know it's a fan favorite, that's why it made it this far in the list at all, and that's not to say that I dislike the actual animal itself, but for its specific interpretation in carnivores, I think Gorgonops leaves a lot to be desired. While the model and texture are great, naturally it's designed by Pohorex, the skin is just your standard brown with faint splotches of green, a color scheme that feels done to death at this point. Its sound work is okay, but it's mostly the exact same call, just pitch shifted. And I know Carnivores has used the same call pitch shifted in the past, but when featured in a mod that includes animals with 3 distinct separate calls, plus unique idle sounds like Coelophysis or Placerius or Lylonsternus, Gorgonops' ever so slight pitch shift edits that even get reused for the idle sounds makes it feel like we're listening to the exact same sound every single time. It is a cool roar, but it gets pretty old after a while. It's also on Smilodon AI, which means it performs an idle animation roughly every 7 years that lasts for about a half second. And speaking of animations, I don't think they're matched particularly well to the rig. When Gorgonops stops walking, its limbs awkwardly have to shift into place for the idle animation, then shift back into position to start walking again. It looks stiff and awkward and unpolished and does a pretty great job at breaking immersion. I don't know guys, I know people love it, but to me personally, Gorgonops could use quite a bit of work before it reaches top tier status. But because it is a fan favorite among the community and is a really cool creature designed by Pohorex, which makes it by default at least good, I wanted to recognize what it does right, so it comes in at number 8. Taking the number 7 spot is the massive herbivore Scutosaurus. Scutosaurus is a DLC creature for Carnivores Triassic, replacing the Placerius, and I think, for me anyway, it's farther up on the list than Placerius because it feels like the Placerius concept, just done better. They're both the bulky, aggressive, mid-tier herbivores like the ceratopsians of other Dino Hunt tours, but Scutosaurus just seems more fleshed out than the Placerius on this tour. Its skin is far more interesting, with a dark cobblestone pattern breaking up the soft grays and purples, all contrasted by a really dark, knobbly head. Its sound work, like the Placerius, is extremely well done and fitting for an animal of this size and build, but where Scutosaurus really excels over Placerius is in the animations. Scutosaurus rocks some fluid, lifelike animations, accompanied by sound work that really sells the weight and heft of this bulky animal, all coming together to make it feel really alive. Lotosaurus may be my favorite Triassic herbivore based on design alone, but in terms of all-around execution, Scutosaurus is right up there with it, and it comes in at number 7. Just missing the top 5 at the number 6 spot is the Quadrupedal Spinosaurus, before Quadrupedal Spinosaurus was even a thing, Arizonosaurus. A fierce, archosaurian predator, Arizonosaurus is one of the most fun, interesting, and creative creatures on the Triassic Tour. A fantastic design with the Spinosaurus-esque sail, long-legged quadrupedal build, and harsh, arid oranges, reds, and purples. Not to mention, its animations are fantastic, especially the idles where Arizonosaurus will leap at and attack small prey burying in the sand. It's just gorgeously done and so fun to watch. Why Arizonosaurus doesn't break into the top 5 on this list is because of its sound work. I cannot stress enough how much I despise these pig sounds on Carnivores creatures. Not even that they're inherently bad sound effects, but because they're so obviously pigs, it just seems like they're never put on the appropriate animals. Raptorclaw put together a custom Protoceratops with pig sounds that I think works beautifully. When Dinosaurs Roamed America pulled it off with its Desmet Asuka, not so much with their Nothronicus. And I can see those pig calls being used well on Triassic's new Lystrosaurus. But for such an agile, nimble, crocodilian predator to be bellowing out such boorish hog calls just seems so out of left field to me. I don't know, it just seems that for everything Arizonasaurus got right with flying colors, those calls are such a colossal misstep. However, it's still a fantastic addition to the Triassic sector, and comes in at number 6. Breaking into the top 5 is the poster boy for the Triassic tour, Lystrosaurus. To say that Carnivores Triassic's Lystrosaurus is iconic would be an understatement. It's the first animal you see on the tour, both on the desktop icon and the main menu artwork. It's one of the rare dinosaurs on the tour, gloriously colored in bold yet naturalistic blue and red, with piercing green eyes and decorative white striping. It's a gorgeous prize to obtain. It's a large, bulky carnivore, slow yet stocky and fun to hunt. And those sound effects, oh my gosh. You cannot beat when Dinosaurs Roamed America's Dilophosaurus calls. They are simply divine. I hope whoever engineered those sound effects got to retire and live in luxury for the rest of their life. And it gets 3 distinct ones for each of its calls, in addition to custom idle sound effects, all topped off with fluid animations on a nostalgically classic model. Triassic's Lystrosaurus, it just is. It's so wonderful and beautiful and challenging and rewarding, and honestly, it and the number 4 pick could be pretty interchangeable. But I gave the number 5 spot to Lystrosaurus because I personally feel it does a couple of things slightly lesser than the number 4 pick. Firstly, the idle animations, while good, are your standard stop and sniff, the default go-to for animating predatory dinosaurs. Topping that off with the fact that it is, or was, a reskin of an already established dinosaur with a pretty messy death animation for a while, Lystrosaurus is great, but has a couple of nitpicky critiques that I still think could be improved upon. However, it is getting a new model to better reflect and contrast the new Dilophosaurid line in the Carnivores universe, and I can't wait to see that bad boy in action. But until then, Lystrosaurus takes the number 5 spot. Moving down to the number 4 spot, we have the ferociously primitive Herrerasaurus. Lystrosaurus may be the most iconic Triassic dinosaur, but I'd say Herrerasaurus is pretty up there with it. I mean, just looking at it, you can hear its guttural snarling and high-pitched shrieks, can't you? This dinosaur's design is just about perfect. Herrerasaurus is a bit of an oddball dinosaur on Earth, and the Carnivores version matches that oddity on FMMU V32. The big, boxy head, the ridged neck, thick, meaty, grasping hands, spiny back, simple yet naturalistic and unique texture, color scheme, and patterning. This thing looks incredible. It also sounds incredible with those fierce shrieks and snarls, and the animations, oh my goodness. The animations are phenomenal. Whether it's scratching an itch, or eating something it's dug up from the sand, or cautiously checking its surroundings for something larger and more ferocious than itself. Triassic's Herrerasaurus has such a unique, fun, and characterized set of animations packed onto such a wonderfully designed dinosaur. My only critiques are that the tail gets a bit wispy at the end, and the walk seems a bit floaty because it barely lands on its claws as it walks. But man, this is a wonderful addition to Carnivores Triassic, and it comes in at number 4. Alright, breaking in the top 3 spot is the culmination of almost a decade of mod-based storytelling. Dino Hunt Corp's first hybridized bioweapon, and the bonus trendsetter for countless mods that followed, Gojira Soros. Admittedly, I don't care for mutated, radioactive, genetically enhanced dinosaurs. When Digital Dreams first announced they wanted to include them in Reborn, I was concerned. Then when they appeared in-game, I thought, that's it? This is nothing. If we're just getting dinosaur variants, why not give us sexual dimorphism or pigmented variations? Why does it always have to be abnormally manipulated monsters? It's always felt like a cheap, vulgar, awesome bro gimmick to capitalize on whatever Jurassic Park or world is currently doing. But in Carnivores Triassic, the Gojira Soros just works. It's the culmination of the story the mod has been telling, from the waste facilities on Vertigo Range, to the radioactive alien temples on Dory Oasis, and the sinister, unnatural atmosphere of Greenshire, all building to the battlefield, one of Dino Hunt Corp's greatest disaster sites, where the creatures escaped and destroyed everything in their path, taking the rest of the planet by force. It's built up, it makes sense, it's the only creature like it in the mod, and serves a story purpose. It's not just thrown in for the sake of cool new dinosaur monster, it's there for a reason, with a great, characterized, and iconic design. Now, even in execution, it's not perfect. I'm still pretty split on the sound work. Some of it I really like, and some of it is so generic monster that I don't really care for it. And the animations, while fluid, don't really convey what this animal is that well in my opinion. They lack the weight and power and unnaturality I'd expect from this monstrosity. They seem very default theropod, and the idols are, again, your standard stop and sniff. Plus, the death animation is extremely disappointing. The Ice Age engine is always praised over the Carnivores 2 engine because it has custom death animations for each AI slot, but no one ever seems to take advantage of that. It's always just the hunter lying on the ground, even with the Gojira Soros, and that's really unfortunate. When we have Jurassic Park Hunter Legend's Spinosaurus chomping down on the hunter, or Carnivores Plus's Iniku Tyrannus swallowing the hunter whole, or even the OG Tyrannosaurus painting the environment red with a human paintbrush, seeing the hunter just fall over as the Gojira Soros strikes a pose for 10 seconds seems really anticlimactic. And I know this thing had a rocky start with the buggy AI and all that, but I think with just a bit more polish, the Gojira Soros could be one of the greatest carnivores creatures ever. Regardless, Triassic's Gojira Soros is iconic. It's the first of its kind, and what it is and represents for carnivores modding is just too incredible. So it comes in at number 3. Taking the penultimate spot at number 2, we have one of the most iconic Triassic dinosaurs ever, Coelophysis. Coelophysis has had an interesting history with Carnivores Triassic. It's gone from a reskinned Gallimimus to, this fun little abomination, and now has hopefully culminated with this beautiful homage to Burian's own depiction of the dinosaur. The greens and yellows, while stereotypical, are rich and work beautifully with the dark stripe patterning. The sound work is genuinely impressive and appropriate, with the call sounding like a mixture of a bird and a reptile, and the idle sounds utilizing the wonderful Walking with Dinosaur Coelophysis shrills and chirps. The animations are gorgeously fluid and fun, with Coelophysis stopping to pick at food it finds around the environment or call out to others of its kind. It feels like a real animal, and the kill animation is just incredibly well thought out and unique. And now that we've unlocked pack hunting AI, this is one of the dinosaurs that I would love to see incorporate that at some point. Seeing where Coelophysis has been and where it's ended up is like night and day. Its design is beautiful, its calls are wonderful, its animations are fantastic, and it's a rare Triassic dinosaur, but it's also like the Triassic dinosaur. Coelophysis and the Triassic just go hand in hand. It's a fun challenge to hunt and a wonderful part of the Carnivores universe. And to me, Coelophysis earns its spot at number 2. And now, the number 1 Carnivores Triassic animal, in my opinion, is none other than the iconic desert crocodile, Asuka. Carnivores Triassic's Asuka is very special to me. Back in the early days of Carnivores modding, when Triassic was really getting started and new models were filtering in, they were all cool and new and intriguing, but the new Asuka model was the first one I saw and genuinely thought, wow, this game can really become something more. I mean, just look at this design. I adore it. The huge, powerful head and jaws, the thick, robust neck and body, long crocodilian tail, the dark gray and purple patterning, armored osteoderms, fearsome stripes, cracked veins. It's just beautiful and fierce and natural and real. And the animations, oh, the animations! The Protoceratops has wonderful, fluidly realistic animations engineered by Cactus, and let me tell you, you would be hard-pressed to find more lifelike and professional animations on any carnivore's animal, official or fan-made. And the actual animations themselves are wonderful, whether it's rearing up to survey its surroundings, or actually laying down to bask with its mouth open, just like a crocodile. These are some of the most breathtaking, unique, fun, and characterized animations I have ever seen on any carnivore's animal. And the sound work is brilliant, perfectly guttural and ferocious. This thing sounds exactly like you'd expect a big, crocodilian apex predator to sound like. There is nothing, not a single thing I dislike about Triassic's Protoceratops. I love everything about it. I fell in love with it instantly, and it made me realize that carnivores could be so much more than just some throwaway 90s hunting game, that it could be an entire world, a universe, populated with creatures and environments and stories that would impact others the way it impacted me. In fact, it's inspired a whole other slew of Rarisuchians that I still hope we get to see in Carnivores Triassic someday. I just love them so much. I know it's a bit of a meme within the community these days, but Protoceratops is probably my favorite carnivore's creature ever. When people think of Carnivores Triassic, they might think of Lystrosaurus or Gojira Soros or Coelophysis. But when I think of Carnivores Triassic, I think of Protoceratops, how it inspired me, and how I think it's the #1 animal in the mod. Alright, so there you go guys, this is my 100% objective and factual opinion on how to rank all of the animals in Carnivores Triassic. I did try to be just a little bit objective in my reasonings for what goes where. I even threw Gorgonops in the top 10 for you guys, you're welcome. But at the end of the day, this is just my opinion, and now I want to hear from you guys. How do you rank all of the Carnivores Triassic animals, and why? I'd love to hear what you guys think. And don't worry, if Carnivores Triassic, somehow, isn't your favorite mod, we'll be doing this with all of the animals and other elements of the Carnivores mods in future videos, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out when we talk about the creatures all across the Carnivores universe. Today's video topic was voted on by my dinosaur hunters over on Patreon, and if you'd like to help decide or be a part of future videos, you can do so by helping support the channel at patreon.com/sorryandtarget. Links to everything are in the description. Thanks as always for watching guys, you are all truly the best, and I will see you guys next time. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching. I genuinely appreciate it and I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you do enjoy the Carnivores games and Carnivores content on YouTube and want to help support this channel, you can do so at patreon.com/sorryandtarget. There's a link down below in the description of this video. As many of you guys know, this YouTube channel is not my job and it takes a lot of my time to work on videos. But I love doing it for you guys, and every little bit donated helps me dedicate more time to making you guys the best Carnivores content on YouTube. Thank you all for everything you do. I love you all, you are all the best. And I will see you guys next time.